welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm Jordan Hill with Rusty Mansell. I think Kip Adams is about to pop in at any minute, but we're going to get this thing started today. It is SEC Championship Week. Georgia getting ready to play LSU in Mercedes-Benz Stadium at 4 p.m. on Saturday. Rusty, how is this SEC Championship Week treating you so far?
You start thinking about the Kirby Smart era, and it's kind of like you're almost this is the norm now. Like you expect to have this week. I remember the 2002 Georgia-Arkansas game and people flipping out, trying to just anybody could get any ticket to sit in the Georgia Dome and how crazy that was. But, obviously since then, Georgia's been several times. And my man Jordan Harris obviously checks in first. How you doing, Jordan? This is the standard under Kirby Smart. And I think Kirby's mentioned it a couple of times. The players mentioned it. If there's something that University of Georgia needs to do different under Kirby Smart is they need to win in December in Mercedes-Benz.
Right on time, Kip. How is the week treating you so far as we get ready for another trip to Atlanta?
He had to get his hair right. Don't.
Man, my hair. Come on now. What my hair does. Let's not go there again. Come on, let's not start with that. I'm good now that I'm on here, man. The laptop was not playing games this morning, but let's get going. It's kind of a big week, I think, for Georgia football. I assume that Rusty was talking about this football game that they're playing on Saturday. So I think that's kind of where my mind's at. It's just not where my laptop's mind was at when we were supposed to start the show. But let's go. Let's not worry about my hair today.
Absolutely. And I want to bring this up too because it's something I've kind of, lost sight of when you talk about this game. And the fact that it's actually been a while since Georgia won the SEC. It's been since the 2017 season. Mm-hmm. They've gone, obviously continue to, for the most part, dominate the East, really, other than 2020. In the last few years, they have gone and played in this game. And I think it's a little bit easy to overlook that I do think this game means a lot to Georgia. Talking a few weeks ago after Georgia clinched the East, Kyrus Jackson was talking to us in the Buttsmeer meeting room and was pointing at the numbers on the wall to indicate, conference championships and said, look, we want to put numbers on the wall. And I think, some people have kind of lost sight of what this game means. I think some people are like, well, they might be looking ahead to the playoff. I do think this means a whole lot to this group in that nobody on this team was on the SEC championship team when they beat Auburn back in 2017. I do think that this game carries a lot of weight with these guys, and I don't think we're going to see a situation where they are caught sleepwalking because I think they do want to say at the end of the year that they are the best team in the SEC.
Yeah, you had Stetson Bennett and Robert Beal on those teams, but they were both redshirting that year, so didn't really get to play a part in the actual game. But yeah, I mean, they all remember what happened last year, and and the other guys, I mean, they have yet to see them win in this setting, and I think especially for Kirby Smart, that he's going to remind them of just how far that they looked ahead last year. And what that did to the, how they played in that game. And obviously what happened in the SEC championship game last year, it actually ended up having a positive impact for Georgia because that was adversity. They looked in the mirror and said, we got caught up in the press clippings and here they are again, 12-0 once again. That is the aspect that Kirby Smart and the coaching staff has to maintain with this team and remind them that, guys, you can be humbled very quickly out there. And, you guys have had a pretty good season, but, you haven't played anyone that's pushed you to the limit yet. And, I mean, LSU has the talent to be able to do that, even though they've had some ups and downs and they're playing some really young guys out there.
Rusty, what do you think about the opportunity they have, again, to go win the SEC for the first time since 2017?
You have to find ways to motivate, and that's in today's world. And these kids can leave with an SEC championship ring, along with a national championship ring and an SEC East ring and all those things. So those kids get to have a piece of jewelry that nobody has, as you said, as Kip pointed out. So, little ways to motivate. Start talking about 2019 games. Start talking about last year. You see Kirby Smart on the behind the scenes talking about you want to do something different than last year. That you want to win this weekend. So I think it's that one more big hurdle for Georgia. They've got to win in December in that building. No matter who they're playing, they've got to get that off. And will they be 2-3 if they were to win this? Is that correct?
That sounds right. I think so, 'cause they
LSU.
lost Alabama twice and LSU.
Yeah, so 2 and 3. So you really want to, kind of a home field. Obviously you want to consider that a home field when you got to get on a bus for 45 minutes there, and LSU's got to get on a plane. So we'll see, but I think there's definitely a lot of motivating factors there. You can motivate this team this week.
Well, this episode of the podcast is going to be our mailbag, answering all y'all's questions, both from our message board, the Junkyard, and also for everybody watching live. And I want to start with one from our guy, Jordan Harris, who's on here. I think he beats us on here sometimes, guys. But is Jaden Daniels healthy? That's really the biggest question coming into this game, at least on the LSU side. LSU's quarterback got banged up. I think he went down twice in that Texas A&M game. Pulled up a tweet from UGA alum Wilson Alexander, who covers LSU now. This is from yesterday. Jaden Daniels will still be in the walking boot. This was on Monday. He has a minor test on Tuesday to test the strength of his ankle. Not much of an update besides that. I do think that's going to be something to watch, because to me, this is not exactly some kind of wild statement or crazy thing. But I mean, I think if LSU is going to keep this close, it's going to be because Jaden Daniels has a big game on offense. And for him to be, even if he plays, for him to be limited, I think that's a concern if you're looking at it from the LSU side. And it's something that I'm sure if he is able to play, I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia goes after him. And we find out really early on how healthy he is in this game.
Especially on third down, the blitz package, as you've been seeing Jalen Walker come in, the true freshman, and kind of take over that role, that spot there. They're trying to create some extra pressure. So when you get to third down, if Jaden Daniels is completely healthy, that to me is a different package as far as, is he going to be on one spot? Can we go get him there and not be worried to death about him taking off up the field? So we'll see early on, kind of. I think early on in that game where he is, I certainly anticipate him playing. A walking boot is not a 100% indicative of what could be happening. Those are always precaution. That decreases the pressure on him. It allows that thing to rehab as much as possible during the week. So I anticipate him playing, but we'll see how much availability he has probably early in that game, and what they're willing to do with him and what he's willing to do as far as with his legs.
To Rusty's point, when we talked to Brian Kelly on the Sunday teleconference, which that update I read a few minutes ago was from Monday, but Brian Kelly sounded fairly optimistic as far as him being able to play. Again, the question is going to be how much and how effective, because he's going to probably have to have one of his better games for them to keep up with Georgia. Want to tackle another injury question, and this was from our board. Rouse Dog 10 asked, "Do we see a full go AD Mitchell on Saturday?" And again, this is the question that has lingered, I think, the entire football season. And I was kind of interested seeing AD on Saturday, watched him warm up. I mean, this guy runs out of the tunnel to get on the field. I posted a video of some of his reps as he was getting going. He winds up not playing any snaps. Now, he was on the field for one of the fourth downs that Georgia was going to go for. Ultimately, Georgia calls timeout. AD goes back to the field, or goes back to the sideline, I should say. And then he wasn't back on the field after that. Based on everything I saw during warmups, it seemed like he was feeling good and feeling like he was making progress on that. We'll see what we see in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday. But, I think, again, Kirby's kind of playing it close to the vest. When we talked to him on Sunday about AD, said, he's been able to do more than he has done the previous week. We're hopeful, sort of the things that we kind of the bingo cards that Kirby likes to hit when it comes to injuries. But I thought AD looked really good, and I'm expecting, barring some kind of setback in practice this week, I think we will see him at least in some capacity when they play LSU.
Yeah, I was told he had another good day yesterday, so I fully anticipate. I think the plan was for him to get up to 10 snaps last week. I think he got 2. Maybe I'm wrong. Which is, regardless, 1-2 is not what you're asking out of probably your top receiver. So as far as full go, I don't know if you're going to see him full go, but Jalen Carter wasn't full go in the game. He came back and he still impacted it. So AD Mitchell, Georgia is a better football team with him on the field. How many snaps will be up to them and him as well. But I did talk to some sources this morning that said that AD had another really good day of practice yesterday. And that's good news for Georgia going into this game Saturday.
How big do you feel like that would be, Kip? Even if he's not 100%, to get him involved and for him to be able to play in this game?
I mean, it's huge. He's the difference maker in this offense, as we've seen as opposing defenses have kind of, they've gotten the film, they've adjusted to what they've seen from Georgia. You've kind of seen Georgia's explosive plays have kind of gone down because teams are kind of stacking the box now. They're saying, hey, we know you have these outstanding tight ends, but we know also that as far as you guys pushing the ball downfield, AD Mitchell and, back when he's playing Arian Smith. I mean, those are the guys that we had to make sure we knew where they were lined up, as far as the wide receiver position is concerned. Lad McConkey's made a ton of plays for Georgia this year, but he's not that guy that you're going to just push the ball down the field, 20-plus yard throws over and over again. Those are not going to be high percentage plays for Georgia. Definitely not the ones that Kirby Smart prefers to have, as far as just them not hitting it as many times as you'd like to. AD Mitchell's that kind of player where you look and go, this is a guy that can win 50-50 battles against us. He could break tackles and he can stretch the field just because he can get separation. And so that's the kind of guy that when we're talking about the college football playoffs, he's a guy that Georgia really needs on the football field just to be able to open up the entire playbook and to keep defenses back on their heels. So as far as this weekend, yeah, if he gets 10, 15 snaps, it's kind of, we're in that George Pickens range now. You're just trying to get him back out there. So when the defense sees him, I mean, it's going to change everything. They're going to have to think more. Even if he's out there and he gets one ball thrown his way, that's going to change the whole dynamic of what they're keying in on. And just the fact that their eye discipline is going to be, taken away a little bit in that aspect, which can open up so many other things for Georgia's offense. So it'd be big to get them back in an increased capacity this weekend and then look forward to the college football playoff, just try to getting him, potentially fully back into this offense. You could see what you saw early on in the season, especially against Oregon.
You think about the issues we've seen from time to time this season as far as creating separation with these receivers. Get a guy like AD Mitchell back, even if it isn't, really to his top capacity until perhaps the playoffs. I mean, that's a huge boost for a Georgia offense that, to its credit, has still been able to score points even with their number one wide receiver watching from the sideline. Another question from our board, 311 Bruja asks, are there any vulnerabilities on UGA looking ahead to the playoff? Any areas UGA really needs to improve over the next month? I'll start with you, Rusty, and then Kip, you can chime in, and then I'll sum it up. Any areas that you really look at as perhaps a weakness for Georgia as we get ready for the postseason to get underway?
I mean, you can't be honest on this podcast without saying they miss Nolan Smith. And I'm talking about pass rush, setting the edge, the ability to chase down sideline to sideline. So, they're trying to do it by committee, and that's the best they've got to do it. But so if you're looking for any type of vulnerability, you can go back and watch a national championship game last year and see the impact that Nolan Smith had, not only in pressuring Bryce Young, but the ability to set the edge and to hold up against bigger tackles. That was one of the most impressive things. You go back and watch Nolan Smith, who is undersized, to be honest with you, where he is and what he does against those bigger tackles. So, Tech got Georgia early on the first drive of this week on a play that probably Nolan Smith keeps him in the pocket on a scramble, and the guy walked into the end zone. So, if there's concerns, it's who can they play there. And I will say this, though, went back and watched a couple of things. Georgia, as the playoffs went on, and you look at Michigan and Alabama, they took Trayvon Walker and doubled his snaps almost. He went from about averaging 40 to I think he played 77 against Alabama. So you look at Michael Williams and you look at Robert Beal and those guys, and if you don't have a game next week or you don't have a game for a month, what are the snap counts? What are you going to do with these guys? Because they got time to recover. So, you look back at kind of what they've done with that position and what they can do. I think you got to watch them play, asking Michael Williams and Robert Beal to, hey, you got to go a few more snaps, and we got to have probably 15 or 20 more out of you. And that's kind of what they did last year with those guys. Once they got set with their lineup, they stayed with it.
Kip, what are your thoughts as far as the weaknesses that stand out to you?
I think we're going to find out if Georgia's been holding anything back from its playbook. We will find out in the next 3 games. A lot of people are wondering, has Georgia gone conservative? Have they gone into a shell as far as just trying to be aggressive offensively? I talked about earlier, obviously with AD Mitchell, I mean, the inability to get separation at the wide receiver position has affected Georgia's offense, and you really see that in the red zone. And it's not just the red zone; it's the fact that Georgia, again, isn't scoring outside the red zone as far as breaking long touchdown runs or big receptions down the field. You don't have to worry about the red zone in those situations. But Georgia is moving the ball down the field, getting into that first and goal at the 9 or 10, and then settling for field goals. So you get into the playoffs, you don't want to settle for field goals on those possessions. You have to get into the end zone more often than not to really have a chance when you're playing some of these better teams. And like if they're facing a team like Michigan, their defense is very impressive. If not as impressive as Georgia's this year, that's a defense that, again, they would test Georgia. They would test their ability to not settle for field goals. To get, you're going to have to score touchdowns on more than 25% or fewer of its drives, which that's happened to Georgia, I think, in 4 games this year. It's been 25% or less. And that is not going to cut it, especially for a team that's one of the 10, 12 best in the country offensively. And so again, it's going to come down to Todd Monken. Can he find the plays he needs to give defenses looks maybe they haven't seen before? Does he have some things that maybe they've practiced on that we haven't seen yet? It seems like they have a play or two each game where it's a new look, a new wrinkle. That's going to be, if he's going to he is in the running to be the assistant coach of the year. This is where you kind of earn that in these playoff games. But that is an aspect that's kind of been an issue. I know it's been a talking point as far as the red zone and field goals versus touchdowns. And I think that is an aspect where these next 3 games, we're just going to have to crank it up a little bit, even though they've gotten some, a great job out of Jack Leslie as far as the field goals are concerned. They know they can depend on him, but you don't want to have to depend on him all the time.
No doubt. And I thought you brought up a good point as far as explosive plays. And it was interesting in the Georgia Tech week, Kirby was talking about turnover margin and talked about something that they really look at more than turnover margin in a game is explosive plays, and like getting those explosive plays and the differential when you are able to create those plays. He said we rely on that a whole lot more than we do necessarily turnover margin, because it's kind of funny, as good as Georgia's defenses have been these last few years, they don't create a ton of turnovers, and those turnover margin numbers don't like pop. You don't look at them and your eyes go, whoa, but the way that teams can get over the hump and the way teams can, that makes the difference in winning and losing games is creating those explosive plays. So to me, that's a huge area of emphasis, something that I want to watch these next few games. And then again, something we've talked about off and on this year is just pass rush. Rusty talked about Michael Williams and some of those guys. They're going to have to be counted on to get after guys like Jaden Daniels. And if we get into the playoffs, people like Caleb Williams, some of the players that have made big plays in these teams that have a chance to make the playoffs. If you're able to get after those guys and make them uncomfortable, it'll be huge in your opportunities and big for your chances to move on to the next round. So we're going to take a quick break. Got more questions to come. Feel free, if you are watching this live, to drop more questions in there. We've got some from our board and got a few more in the comments that we're going to get to. But first, we're going to take a break. Welcome back, everybody. Well, yeah, let's get back to some of the questions. I'll just throw a general one to Rusty. A lot of questions just about the state of recruiting right now for Georgia. Where do things stand, and what should we be on the lookout for coming into what will be a very busy December?
Man, December is going to be – me and Kilt's been doing this a long time combined. And I don't think either one of us kind of understand what's about to happen. And I've made that mention on the board. Like, there's recruiting – There's very few OVs left. Like, normally me and Kip would be like, what are we going to do in December? But, on Monday, this transfer portal opens up, and God knows what's about to happen there. around the country. You're already seeing names all over the place. Kids getting in, kids are going to be going in Monday for sure. So there is a lot going on. I think somebody asked a guy here, asked on the side earlier on the board here, asked, does Georgia have some guys coming up? Well, Sam Mpemba, 5-star from IMG, makes his decision, I believe, on Sunday. So there's potential there. I think Georgia's in a good spot there. Tennessee certainly in play there. Miami's trying to get in late, which is always makes things interesting nowadays. So, there's some guys going to make some decisions, but, in a month from now, we're going to see this thing. One thing we've always seen under Kirby Smart is he's always had almost a signing day surprise, just about. And everybody always asks me about the number of places. Me and Kip don't know the number. I mean, Kirby Smart knows the number of how many spots they've got left. I gave up on that years ago. So they will not undersign. I can assure you of that. That is something I am confident. They're not going to undersign. Now, how many spots they have left is certainly up to them and what they know. So I anticipate a very, very busy December. What I can tell, in my past experience is when you see Kirby Smart go in home during this limited amount of time he has, that's usually a telltale of either they're trying to hold on to this person or they're really, really involved because playtime is over. How I like to say that. I mean, Kirby Smart will get on a plane Sunday morning and the dude will be gone till next Friday night, have some official visits, and he'll get right back on a plane and be gone for another 5 days. So until they start bowl practice or whatever, how they're going to do that. So we can do this with confidence. I can say that we're going to have daily notes on who the coaches are seeing, but I've always found it in my experience where you see Kirby Smart is where they're in a recruiting battle.
Another recruiting and really just general state of Georgia question that was asked. That will be 3318 asked, is there any concern with our running back recruiting and what running back room looks like in 2023 and 2024? Kip, I'll throw this one to you. Just what do you make of where things are with Georgia right now and what moving pieces we may see in the next few weeks, maybe even the next few months?
Well, I mean, I think they got a pretty damn good one on board right now in Roderick Robinson. I think that's a guy that, his size, his ability to move at 6'1", 230 pounds, that guy's going to be trouble behind Georgia's offensive line. I mean, that's exactly the type of guy that Del McGee likes, a bigger guy, a guy that, he knows he can depend on to get it done between the tackles, and a guy that can make guys miss at his size. And honestly, he's really impressed with the way he moves for being a bigger back. I mean, again, yes, Georgia as of now has missed out on Justice Haynes, and that was a big time miss. And Rusty said it multiple times. This is one of the biggest surprises we've covered in recruiting. That was a guy that we thought was going to pick Georgia. Now again, as Rusty said, this next month is going to be a roller coaster, and Georgia's not giving up on Justin Haynes. In-state running back out of Buford, obviously a big legacy as well. They're going to keep talking to him as long as he's communicating back, and all signs are he's continuing to talk to them. That's not a projected flip, but few flips are projected. Most of the times these things happen real quickly, and I think that's something we're going to be covering every day. If Kirby Smart's, using an in-home on Justin Haynes, that's probably someone he thinks he's in there with. And I think that's one we'll be watching and monitoring. If not him, I think they go to the portal. I think, again, the transfer portal right now, it seems like it's getting stocked up by the hour with big-time playmakers. And I just don't think there's going to be a shortage of guys who can step right in and help out. And I think Georgia will be able to find an impact running back to add to that backfield if they do not flip Justice Haynes, which, again, I'm not projecting, but it's still something we're going to watch because, again, that was one of the bigger shockers of the recruiting cycle. And often in those situations, when it gets down to it, those final hours, you have to actually, put that pen to paper or now electronically send that, NOI in. A lot of times these guys look back and they have some second thoughts. If he has second thoughts, Kirby Smart's going to swoop in there.
Brad Eagler with a nice little note there that says Rusty blink if Haynes is a dog.
Keep those eyes open, boy.
That's a good one, Brad. I'd be blinking if I thought Joe Namath was going to Georgia. So, yeah, that's a good one.
I wanted to piggyback off of what Kip talked a little bit about the portal. Blackout Dog asked any early intel on the UGA pursuing any players in the portal, and not looking so much at specifics, Rusty, but what positions do you think Georgia could target? Positions they might be interested in adding guys when it comes to the portal.
1,000,000,000% wide receiver. I mean, they listen. You can say what you want, but you see lack of explosive plays. And I'm not singling anybody out that had some injuries. Aaron Smith's been hurt. A.D. Mitchell's missed 70% of the season. Georgia's got to have some players. And you cannot call explosive plays without a fast car. You know what I mean? That's just bottom line. So they have got to get guys. And I like the class. I like the wide receiver class they got. I like the guys they're in on. I think they're about to add some difference makers to the roster. But Georgia is not in the business of waiting. They're a potential national championship team now every year under Kirby Smart, and they're going to go out and get some players. I would not be surprised, at least, for them to sign 2 wide receivers if they can get the right mix. Again, we're not even the portal is not even officially open yet, and there's some targets out there now. A young man from Georgia Tech went there yesterday, and he's from Dutchtown, played with Will Anderson, and he's a dude. Now I don't know if Georgia's going to make a move there, but if I'm sitting in that room and I have to make a decision, he's going to be one I'm going to take a look at because he just put some explosive plays on us and caused us some stress. So there's a lot of guys out there. We'll see how much deeper it gets, but I think that the priority for me for Georgia has got to be wide receiver, and I think they probably would like to add an outside linebacker with some experience, maybe a 5 technique. Because they've missed on some guys. That's the one thing in this recruiting class that I've made it known on the board that they've missed some guys. So at that position, just missed Hobbs last week in Tennessee, missed Cameron James early in the year, Kelby Collins. There's only so many of those 6'5", 250-pound, 260-pound bodies that can fit what Georgia wants them to do with that 5 technique. So I'm confident in wide receiver. I think that's going to be a huge priority. I think also that the question, if Georgia is able to win Saturday, and if Georgia is able to win on New Year's Eve, they would play obviously the national championship. So those kids on their team are not going to go into the portal until in January. So Georgia, obviously at that point, there's a small window in January for this second round of the portal. And who leaves Georgia? Does it create some places they got to take a guy? So I don't really know how the board's going to play out for them, but I'm confident that Georgia's going to try to sign at least 2 wide receivers that can play right now and fit what they're looking for.
Fascinated to see how the portal works on both sides for Georgia. Again, you mentioning if Georgia's in a playoff run, if anyone's going to leave Georgia, when exactly they do leave, because
usually last year, remember they won the national championship, and like that Monday they had like 5 kids go in. So that's and now it's the window, the structured window. So even more, those teams that wind up playing for that national championship that Monday is going to be hey, we won the national championship Monday night. Well, Tuesday morning, bam, that portal unloads. So that'll be something we watch in January.
It is truly the most wonderful time of the year. There's no doubt about that. Not a slow time for anybody that's covering this, but this is why we do it, and that's just a part of it. Tackle another question. I'll take this one from Jordan. 1991 asks, which matchups do y'all like the best to exploit LSU? I'm actually going to write about this a little bit after we get off the podcast, but I'm really intrigued by Georgia's offensive line going up against LSU, and really more so in the run game. They're coming off of the game LSU had last week, just could not stop Texas A&M on the ground. And frankly, I feel like right now Georgia is running the ball better consistently game to game than they were early in the year. You think about when they were scoring those high totals early in the year, we still had real questions about Georgia's run game, and I feel like they've played well lately. I feel like Kendall Milton is starting to get back into the flow after dealing with injuries a couple times this year. Kenny McIntosh, we saw what he's able to do both out wide and also with the ball running between the tackles. I mean, I just think he's such an explosive player. And to me, when you look at the playoff run going ahead, obviously if you get A.D. Mitchell back, that'll help considerably. But I feel like Kenny McIntosh is, to me, Georgia's key player on offense going forward, just because what he can do. And then also the other guys as well. Dejon Edwards has carried the ball a whole lot. been a guy that they've trusted, and saw a little bit of Branson Robinson in that Georgia Tech game. So to me, I'm really fascinated and interested in watching Georgia's offensive line, more so in the run game, but also we've seen them protect well week after week. I think they've got a chance to prove that. I think Harold Perkins and B.J. Ojulari, both very talented guys, but I think that this Georgia offensive line is going to be up for the challenge and have a chance to set the offense up to play really well on Saturday.
They better put a body on Harold Perkins. You don't want to run sideline to sideline with that dude. So I think you look at those big guys, Tate Ratledge, Xavier Trust, those big 6'7", 320-pounders. Somebody's got to get physically in front of him. I think the way to attack him, and I think Texas A&M did a lot of that, is they came downhill at him because Arkansas went sideline to sideline against him, and they got ran out of the building offensively because of that guy alone.
Yeah, definitely. This is a game where I think just the line of scrimmage, Georgia has the ability to take advantage and take over on both sides of the ball. Defensively, I don't think LSU's got the depth on the defensive line. Offensively, I mean, they're starting freshmen at left and right tackle. Granted, I believe the left tackle's done a pretty good job there, but those are guys that you can still take advantage of the fact that they may not have seen everything. And for Georgia, that may be bringing a Javon Bullard or Tyke Smith on a blitz. There are ways to confuse these guys with different looks. And I think Georgia, if not their defensive line, then again, sending the star position, sending some, different linebackers, they're going to have a chance to confuse those guys. And I think if you look at this LSU offense, we talk about Georgia not being able to stretch the field. LSU doesn't have the guys that really, that force your safeties to kind of stay back there. Their best pass catcher right now is a freshman tight end, Mason Taylor, doing a good job, but not a guy that, again, I think he's averaging 9 yards a catch right now. It's not a guy that, on paper should really stretch the defense out. So I think this is one of those where Georgia should be able to manufacture some pressure. They don't have Marvin Jones Jr. out there. He's banged up. Don't have the, your edge rushers that you had to start the season. But I do think Georgia should be able to manufacture some pressure with some different looks and really confuse that offensive line, make some plays in the backfield.
Before we wrap up this episode, throw in the award-winning men's basketball minute for you guys that everybody is clamoring for every episode. Georgia is 5-2 now. Had a pretty successful trip down to Daytona Beach. Unfortunately, I was not able to bring my towel and my bathing suit, get down there for it. But 1-1, beat St. Joseph's to open it. Thought it was a very good performance, particularly in the first half. The best defensive performance Georgia has had since Mark Fox was walking the court there in Athens. And then second game had a really good first half against UAB. Just couldn't keep it up, but I wasn't necessarily surprised because this UAB team, Andy Kennedy, the former Ole Miss coach, I think they're going to be an NCAA tournament team. Came back on Sunday and played ETSU. A pretty strong performance, kind of a so-so first half and finished strong. Justin Hill, no relation, has played really well for Georgia. He had a good performance down in Daytona and had, I think, 12 points in the second half. So kind of an interesting stretch coming up. They play Hampton on Wednesday, and then they've got 2 really big games in Atlanta. They're going to play Georgia Tech at McCamish on December 6th, and then they'll come back after a little bit of a break for Holiday Hoopsgiving and play Notre Dame in State Farm Arena. So Georgia, I think, is in a pretty good start to the Mike White era. 5-2, they're 1 win away from their entire win total from the 2021-2022 season. I think positive signs. I still think this is a team that's probably going to struggle a little bit when we get into SEC play. Their bigs have had issues, a lot of points in the paint given up. But I think for year one, things are going pretty well, and it's been a fun team to cover so far, and excited to see these next few games, get back in Stegman and see what this team can do.
Do we still have the subscription deal going?
I think it ended last night. If I'm not
right now, I believe it's 50% off.
50% off. Getting a lot of recruiting questions right here on the right, and I'll say this, but we'll rarely say it. Go to Dogs 247 and join. Get you a month of December. If you don't like it, just come right back. I think you will, if you come in, try it for a month, skip Bojangles for one day. And I know that's hard, to skip it for one day and join the site we had a ton of subscriptions yesterday, huge day for new members. And if you guys are listening, thank y'all for joining. It's a very, very big day yesterday. New members taking advantage, come out, take the subscription, set your watch for 30 days and bail out if you want to. I think we feel confident if you come over and try it. But a lot of these questions we answer every single day on the board, and hope you guys give us a try.
Absolutely. And hey, remember, it's holiday season. You can't figure out what to gift that buddy of yours that's a big Georgia fan. Hey,
That's right.
set him up with all of us.
Yep.
We're going to wrap up this episode. Appreciate everybody who's watching live and listening live. And for everyone who's listening after the fact, do want to go ahead and plug, if you are watching this live on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, I will have a preview podcast with Dylan Sanders of Go247, our LSU site. We're going to be talking about Saturday's game, what we expect, learn a little bit about Brian Kelly and the Tigers, and sort of the expectation on what's going to go down in Atlanta on Saturday afternoon. So that should be a fun one. But we'll finish it up right there. Appreciate Rusty and Kip for popping on. Appreciate all you guys watching and listening and subscribing and helping us do what we do. So we really appreciate that. So get out of here on that. Thanks, everybody. And until next time, take care.